Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here with another falconry video. Today's video I'm going to be talking about the difference between an imprint hawk versus a passage hawk and which one is better. Before I do that though, I want to specify this video is going over a group of hawks called Buteos. Those are your soaring hawks. Now in the United States where I live, a red-tailed hawk is probably the most classic, iconic Buteo. Long, broad wings, long tail, short, thick, powerful toes. Typically rodent hunters in the wild. They can soar, they can glide, they like to still hunt from a tree. Now, this is the digital age, so I've made this very clear in my videos. To the whole worldwide audience, a Buteo is a buzzard. Americans have a hard time with that because of a lot of weird linguistic issues. A couple hundred years ago, people used the term buzzard incorrectly to mean a vulture. A buzzard is not a vulture. A buzzard is a soaring hawk. Now, the true hawks, or the forest hawks, are the accipiters. Now, like a goshawk, a northern goshawk is a prime example of an accipiter. And I do have to specify that because in America, if I say hawk, most people, red-tailed hawk, Harris hawk, goshawk, they just can't, they're hawks. Even though we know the different taxons, we call them hawks. Where I know for a lot of other people watching this video, I should, instead of red-tailed hawk, be saying red-tailed buzzard. So, for this purpose of this videos, I am referring to buzzards, to Buteos. This is the group of hawks, and they're not true hawks, but the group of hawks that I'm referring to for this video. I've done other videos on accipiters and will do other videos, but this is specifically on Buteos. So, an imprint bird versus a passage bird. Which is better, which is worse, and why? Now, just as the ground rules, an imprint is a bird that you take as a baby, whether it's captive bred or from the wild, and you raise it up. The wisest way to do that is to socially imprint them instead of just, hey, I'm your parent bringing food. And a passage bird is a bird that is full-sized and has left the care of its parents, but it is not an adult based off of its coloration. It does not yet have adult-colored feathers, adult plumage, which it will get on its first molt at basically 1 year old. So these are your two birds. Now, the Buteos, or buzzards, that are normally flown in America, the red-tailed hawk is an incredible bird to hunt with and to train and work with. And it used to be the only bird, one of only two birds you could start with. It used to be you could only start with a red-tailed hawk or an American kestrel. Those were kind of your options. And so a lot of people got a lot of experience with these. I do love red-tails. I do fly those. I do have a red-tailed hawk right now even. Ferruginous hawks, on the other end of the spectrum, ferruginous hawks are our largest Buteo in North America, and arguably the most difficult to train, the most complex mentally, the largest, the most powerful, and the most unique and specialized in the ways they hunt both in the wild and in training. There's other birds too. I absolutely love hunting with female rough-legged hawks. I might get one this year. Rabbit populations are still down enough. It's hard to justify getting another Buteo to hunt rabbits with, but rough-legged hawks, very few people fly them, but the females are wonderful birds, easy to train and great to work with. Swainson's hawks I have worked with. I don't care to fly them myself, but I know a lot of other people who have. There's a lot of other smaller Buteos, like red-shouldered hawks. I've done videos on those. And there's tiny birds that, like the broad-winged hawk that back east that really, I can't imagine using it in falconry, and yet maybe there's a way. But my point is, there are a range of Buteos pretty much all over the world. Almost any part of the world you go into, there are Buteos. Now, in my area, we have very specific migrations. So a lot of times we have the adult birds leave their young and start to migrate south. And then once this time of year, beginning of middle of October, it gets cold, and from the mountains and the northern climes, those first-year birds that are passage enter my area. Spend a few months and might leave, and then later on, November, December, we get birds from as far away as Canada, Alaska, and even from Russia. We get some rough-legged hawks that rather than flying up and over the Himalayas into India, find it easier to just head across the Bering Strait and then fly down and end up in Utah. So we have birds banded in Russia that end up in Utah. It's kind of strange and kind of neat. Those passage birds are a gem. Any of these, whether it's ferruginous hawk, red-tailed hawk, rough-legged hawk, if you want to fly a Buteo, an early passage bird, October, November, is an incredible bird to fly. They have left their parents' care. They have built flight muscles. They've probably done some migrating so that they're fit. They know how to hunt, but they're not solidly ingrained in one way of hunting. Because you see, most Buteos are rodent hunters. And if you're catching a red-tailed hawk in December, January, February, they've had months and months and months and months of hunting rodents. That is harder for them to make the jump to be like, hey, we want to hunt jackrabbits. It's like, that's a very large prey animal. Or, hey, we want to hunt ducks off of a canal. That's a big jump off of, I'm just a red-tailed hawk sitting on a telephone pole. There's a mouse or a vole or a gopher. Dive on it and catch it. And instead you're asking them, no, go charging and chase after a jackrabbit. It's harder to get them up and running. You still can, but you have your work cut out for you. So in October or November, passage buteo is an incredible bird. And they're quiet. They're not prone to be vocal. They're not prone to food beg. And if you train them right using, I've done lots of videos on how to be careful feeding on the fist and how to trade off a lure properly so that they don't become fist-bound or lure-bound or aggressive. I've given videos on that and I'll continue to do so. But if you do it right, there's no reason that a passage buteo shouldn't be quiet, very calm and sociable around you, non-aggressive, and very easy to enter on game. It's easy. Now, I'm in Utah, and I understand different parts, even in the United States, are going to have maybe different times of year that are better. That's why it's always good to be in contact with the falconers in your area and understand what is the natural order of things in the birds and in the biomes that you live. But I say that a passage buteo is the absolute best. So why on earth would you get an imprint? Well, there's a few reasons. The biggest reason is accessibility. And the same thing, it's the biggest reason why I ever get, when it comes to accipiters, which can be much more aggressive, I prefer to get a passage, but it's hard to get a passage. Where if you find a nest, or you have a captive bred one, it's a guaranteed thing. And it's the same thing with buteos. I do not fly imprint buteos at all, except for ferruginous hawks. And the only reason why is if I really want to fly a ferruginous hawk, our migration patterns in Utah are such that some years it's a piece of cake to find a passage, first year, ferruginous hawk, and some years it's impossible. You're driving everywhere and you're finding adults, but you can't find a single one. It's just the way the migration routes go. You're putting hundreds of miles on your vehicle and you're finding nothing. Where if you know where a nest is and you pull a first year baby, you know you have it. And so that is, and then you train it right, and I'll get into the potential problems in a second. But that is my justification of why I ever would. Otherwise, there's no reason if I would always get a passage over an imprint when it comes to buteos. Now, why is that? So again, I'm establishing a good justifiable reason why to get an imprint is because maybe in your area, the species you're going after can only be obtained as a baby. You can't guarantee it otherwise. Or maybe the time of year. Maybe you live in an area and you're crazy and want to fly a Swainson's hawk, and that's your thing. You're like, yeah, I really want a Swainson's. I'm passionate about the species. Maybe they're not as capable as a red-tailed, but that's what I want. And maybe by the time you're getting into fall, to the time of year that they're more passage, they'll already be gone. Maybe your state has restrictions on what months of the year you can trap. And so maybe you have to get a baby if that's what you want, if you want to get the bird. Otherwise, it falls outside of the seasons you need. So there are reasons why it might happen. So regardless of which buteo you're thinking of getting as an imprint, first of all, if you can help it, don't. But if it's your only choice and it's the way you're going to do it, the problems you can run into, first and foremost, is aggression. It is very difficult to properly imprint a buteo. Even if you're doing it socially and doing all the techniques I've outlined in other videos where you don't give them food directly, where instead you bring them to food like you do with any other imprint, so that they're not begging you for food or attacking you for food. Instead, you are bringing them food. Even doing all that right, it is extremely difficult to get them to do that and to transfer their ideas over to quarry. I don't know why. Harder than anything else. I would say falcons are the easiest to imprint properly. And then I'd say eagles are next. And then I would say accipiters, very tricky, but doable. And for me personally, the hardest to properly and safely imprint would be Harris hawks and buteos. And it's like, if you can have them if it's captive bred, let them parent reared. Do it parent reared and get them passage if you can help it. one of the things I read an article years ago. If you know this article, please put a link to it down below because I can't remember. It might have been in American Falconry magazine, which is an amazing publication. If you can support and subscribe, you should. I might have been in there, but whatever this article was, this is a couple decades ago. But there was a falconer who circumstantially would do imprint red tails out of necessity, and their big thing is they would basically do a sheet like a ghost. They would put like a whole sheet over, walk into the room, and you're just a nebulous sheet handing food to the baby as it's growing. But it's still kind of like the idea of parent rearing. It's still trying to keep you out of the equation. There are people who will do puppets, just like people do with the Peregrine Fund or programs to save California condors. You don't want them imprinting on you, these babies, these eyases, and so people will, again, shield the view of you from the baby and have a puppet of a raptor head bring in and through a little hole and feed the baby bird. You can do that with a Buteo, but to me that's a tremendous amount of work that can be easily avoided if you just get a passage bird. The biggest principle is you have to do everything you can to avoid any association with food and you if you're going to try to imprint a Buteo. You do not want to associate with food. If you do in any way, you're going to have aggression and you're going to have vocalization. It can be done, and again, if you have no choice, then that's kind of what you're stuck with. But I see this a lot too lately, where some of the laws in the United States have loosened up and there are legal ways that you could get a bird from a rehabber, for wildlife rehabilitator. Like maybe there's some orphaned red-tailed hawks that, a tree got cut down and there were these orphan red-tailed hawks. They brought them to a wildlife rehabilitator and the rehabber's looking for a home for them, and you can legally transfer now directly in most states. And you might say, well, hey, I'm a new falconer. I want a red-tailed hawk. I don't want to wait to trap until fall. Hey, there's this baby right here, right now. Great, I'm going to get it. And we see time and time again, usually when that happens, people end up having extreme issues with aggression and vocalization. And you do not want a bird like a red-tailed hawk or a Swainson's hawk coming and attacking you. I have successfully imprinted a few over the years, typically for rehabbers that I just would come and volunteer and help them get a bird ready to go for educational shows at zoos. And it can be done, but it's such a tremendous amount of work. So again, the rule of thumb is if you want a Buteo of any kind, if you want a buzzard of any kind, the best way to go, hands down, is passage. And the next best thing is parent raised. Like if it's captive bred, if you can't have it be parent raised, you're still going to have to get over some early socialization, getting them acclimated, but they usually learn very quick. Buteos are smart, they're adaptable, and if they've already totally made the switch to nobody's feeding me, and I've had at least a month in the wild away from parents or away from anything else where I have had to hunt for myself, some switches in their head, and they know, okay, I'm me, it's on me. And then suddenly when you come into the picture, you don't represent a new parent coming in and giving them freebies. You represent a new anomaly, a new chapter in their lives, instead of a reiteration of an old chapter of their lives, which was a chapter of parents are feeding me, I am totally dependent on them, I should beg and be aggressive towards whatever they bring me. You don't want that. You don't want them. So you want at least a month from the time they're kind of leaving parental care until you have them. And again, whether captive bred or passage, that is the way to go. So kind of an interesting topic. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you had different experiences, and if so, what techniques you use that help you to have success with imprint Buteos. I've got a lot of very more in-depth videos coming up soon. I've been very busy and I had a lot of stressful things going on, so I apologize that I missed a few videos, but I've got some really fun ones coming up, and I'll try to keep up on this, having a video at least a week. I appreciate your help. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and as always, happy hawking.